Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me for Stay Free with Russell Brand Holiday Festive Special. Yes, you're probably bored of your family by now. You're sick of watching legacy media propaganda. You know that even in the season of goodwill to all men, they're hating on you. Well, today is part one of our special show, which is called Conspiracy Theory to Conspiracy Fact, where we show you the number of times this year that you were right. Not those people who try to tell you how to think. You were right. We're talking about Nord Stream, January the 6th, and your Ukraine war, where the legacy media and the state told you one thing, and then, let's just wait a little bit of time, and here comes the truth, the holy name of the truth. The first part is available on YouTube. Thanks, guys, for tuning in there, you awaken wonder. We want you. We're saving souls, baby. As far as we see this as, we're fighting for souls right now. This is the time, the spooky time of Christmas, the time of the awakening of the divine. We're going to be over there participating because this is the time where we got to wake up. This is it, because when the king was born, where did they look? They looked in the palaces, but where did they find the king born? Among the animals, in the manger, down among the poverty. This is where it's going to come from. This is where the revolution's going to come from. So, if you're watching us on YouTube, download the Rumble app, won't you? Get over a Rumble, watch it at the home of free speech. The manger of free speech, I call it. Remember to subscribe and give us a like over there because it helps us in ways that I'm afraid I don't understand. Now, this is our first conspiracy to fact, Nord Stream. Do you remember when what they tried to tell you is that Russia blew up its own pipeline? Do you remember that? They went, it's blown up this pipeline that financially benefits Russia. What? Hold on, that doesn't even make sense. Well, do you remember that it wasn't Russia at all? This is a funny, informative video. Why don't you light up a Christmas, I don't know what you do. Do you smoke? Is it drugs? Do what you do within the confines of the law and watch this fantastic video. Nord Stream pipeline, who blew it up? It's not as if Joe Biden literally admitted it on TV that they'd done it long before it happened, was it? Here's the news. No, here's the effing news on Nord Stream. Now, we live in the age of amnesia. Oh, you're not still going on about COVID, are you? Oh, you're not still going on about Nord Stream pipeline. Oh, you're not still going on about the holy war in the Middle East. Listen, try to stay focused. That's what we all have to do. We can't all live in a TikTok mindset where if something happened 30 seconds ago, you're not interested in it anymore. Remember, when that Nord Stream pipeline blew up, we all went, that's interesting because here's why. America have been talking about blowing up that pipeline to make sure that Europe are reliant on resources that they're able to control. It's really odd that the legacy media are saying, Russia blew up that pipeline themselves because Putin, as we've been telling you every day now on the news, is crazy and this is an unprovoked attack. Again, obviously that war is really bad and Russia's aggression and destruction of Ukrainian citizens and the ending and annihilation of the Ukrainian people, that's really, really terrible. But 2014 was a really significant date in this conflict, and the actual fact, because the legacy media are reporting it quietly. Propaganda, very loud. Truth, very quiet. Extraordinarily interesting. Let's have a look at how the government and legacy media reported on the Nord Stream pipeline at the time to ensure that the truth didn't leak out like natural gas.
I think, as Mr. Sullivan mentioned, there are three now national investigations being done into the Nord Stream 2 explosion by three of our allies. We are not going to get ahead of that. That work is still ongoing. We still do believe it was an act of sabotage. The United States was not involved.
Okay, sabotage, United States not involved, okay.
In any way, contrary to some press reporting out there.
Oh, conspiracy theorists.
But we need to let the work of these investigators go on, and it needs to go on unimpeded.
Can't impede their work. Oh.
Did the U.S. or a proxy for the U.S.
Proxy? That's weird. What do you mean proxy? Proxy war? Hey, wait, what are you saying? Are you saying that the U.S., because of the way that the popularity of international and foreign wars has waned since Vietnam, have to set up proxy states and fund foreign armies in order to meet their agenda and set up alliances with other countries and then legitimize wars that facilitate their aims? What, in places like Ukraine? What are you? I'm actually offended. I'm not even going to answer that. I'm offended you'd even ask me that.
Have anything to do with the explosion on the Nord Stream pipeline?
The United States had nothing to do with it. That's just Russian propaganda and disinformation.
Because that's the only people that do propaganda and misinformation. Russia. They're probably interfering with an election right now. Look out your window. You're trying to do an election. I bet Russia. Oi! Just let us vote for whichever one of these two, basically the same parties we choose. Bloody Putin.
Now, we know it was an act of sabotage, but there's an investigation going on right now.
We'll get to the bottom of this, and at the bottom, it'll be Putin.
I think we're going to get into credentialing that in terms of, who was responsible.
But it was Putin.
We're going to let the investigators take a look at that.
Until they come up with Putin.
But clearly this was an act of sabotage.
All right.
By Putin.
All right, here's the Secretary of State. This is why it has churned up all kinds of questions. Take a listen.
It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy.
Anthony, Ixnay on the energy now.
And thus to take away from Vladimir Putin.
Are you an actual idiot? Are you an actual... Don't say that to the public. They will know that we did it.
Is a means of advancing his imperial designs. That's very significant. And that offers tremendous strategic opportunity for the years to come.
Oh, I don't know why he said that. It's out of control. That cuckoo. Do you notice how with their suits and their badges and their logos and the flags, whether it's the legacy media or the politicians that are trotted out in front of you, there's this kind of assumption of superiority that you're supposed to listen to them. But I think many of them are actual verifiable idiots. They're not better than you or more clever than you. They have to just keep your energy really low. Like, oh, God, it's so exhausting being alive. Oh, God, there's no point. What's the point? What have I got to look forward to? Oh, just some food or just some distraction somewhere, some sort of little onanistic loop of living. Because while these mighty people, these Ubermensch, they run the world for us. They're not better than you. They're actual idiots.
Talking about strategic opportunity about this moment, so you can officially say that the U.S. was not involved in any way in this attack.
I'm already nodding because I've already decided. I didn't, in fact, decide. I was told what to say, so I'm just waiting for you to stop talking.
That's right. That's correct.
So it must be half past conspiracy. Let's see what they're saying now.
The man in this picture is Colonel Roman Shavinsky. According to an exclusive from the Washington Post and Spiegel, he was central to the controversial bombing of the Nord Stream natural gas pipelines last year.
Don't look well, does he? He looks like he's been involved in blowing up some gas at the bottom of the ocean. He looks knackered.
Sources have painted a picture of him managing logistics for a 6-person team.
At the time, we spoke to Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, and it goes, would Navy SEALs be able to do it? He goes, yeah.
Purely hypothetically, would it be possible for a Special Forces team to undertake the sabotage of a pipeline?
Yeah.
I still think it's really worth talking to actual military experts that are not somehow shepherded by the military-industrial complex, like people that have been high up in the military but now have no connection to it. They'll look at it and go, yep, that's special ops.
To plant explosive charges on the gas pipelines. They say he didn't act alone and that his orders ultimately came from senior military officials.
Of course he's not acting alone. That'll be the next thing. Lee Harvey Oswald did that. Lee Harvey Oswald resurrected himself out of the grave, then he swam, went into that book depository place, got himself a couple of books on how to blow up pipelines, swam down to the very depths, and then he blew that bloody thing up. And we'd asked him not to. I mean, not asked him because we have no connection with him. He's never been a CIA agent. What? I've got a cold.
Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines run from Russia to Germany and provide energy to millions of people in Europe. Critically, the Nord Stream bypasses Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has previously denied Ukrainian involvement in the explosion.
That guy, what's next? Weapons of mass destruction blew up that pipeline. Doesn't it worry you? Let me know in the chat. This is a serious question. How often do you sort of see a story on the news and go, I bet this is because of that? And then you find out, oh yeah, it is. Like when that happened, Nord Stream pipeline blew up, it's like, well, is that because like it's advantageous to this alliance between the Ukraine and the United States after the 2014 coup that they want Ukraine to basically become a kind of Balkan state that they can use control to agitate one of their historic and ongoing opponents? They're blowing up that pipeline because that's part of the economic might of Russia is their natural resources. And then they'll probably say Russia did it themselves. Like, didn't you sort of just think that? Not because you're some sort of strategic geopolitical genius, because it's obvious. And then they get Anthony Blinken or that other geezer come and tell them, what's happened there is plain and simple. Lee Harvey Oswald and Putin and Osama bin Laden are sort of a supergroup now, and they've done that together. They're like the Beatles, but for blowing up pipelines. I get it.
The Ukrainians definitely didn't do it.
You did, though. It's amazing. Not that you can particularly blame Zelensky, because you only need to see poor old Zelensky trotted out of the Golden Globes or begging for money on the television to recognise that he's temporarily been hoovered up into the system, trotted around like a pawn. Gaddafi was in that position once. Colonel Gaddafi was once favoured and loved by Western leaders. Like, oh, Libya, let's make Libya work out. And he's like, I don't like that Gaddafi anymore. White uniforms, medals. He's like some sort of mad ice cream man. Let's nut him off. If Zelensky don't start singing the right tunes, bye-bye, baby.
What we're interested in is arms deliveries. and our victory.
So the legacy media appear to have caught up with where you were a year or two ago. What's next? COVID's not as bad as they're saying. A senior Ukrainian military officer with deep ties to the country's intelligence services played a central role in the bombing of the Nord Stream natural gas pipelines last year, according to officials in Ukraine and elsewhere in Europe, as well as other people knowledgeable about the details of the covert operation. There's so much evidence of this. Joe Biden had said stuff publicly. Condoleezza Rice had said it was just like Seymour Hersh, a decorated, respected journalist who they've had to reframe as a conspiracy theorist or whatever. So bloody obvious. There's so many of these now. It's crazy. The officer's role provides the most direct evidence to date tying Ukraine's military and security leadership to a controversial act of sabotage that spawned multiple criminal investigations and that US and Western officials have called a dangerous attack on Europe's energy infrastructure. That is pretty dangerous, and I don't know if it's a war crime or whatever. I don't know how these words are used anymore, who gets to determine how stuff gets labelled. But what I will say is it was a total lie. The media, without any investigation at all, they didn't go, well, should we look into this? They didn't send right, guys, let's get a scoop now. Let's find out once and for all. Let's see what goes on. No, they just the Russians did that. Remember when that missile came out of Poland? Oh, that was probably, oh, no, sorry, it was us. Oh, okay, sorry. Zip. Roman Chervinsky, a decorated 48-year-old colonel who served in Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, was the coordinator of the Nord Stream operation. People familiar with his role said managing logistics and support for a 6-person team that rented a sailboat under false identities. Who's going for a sailing holiday? And what exactly have you got there? Just this is fishing bait. What, those canisters and this dynamite? That's right, we're fishing for very big fish. Bloody Vladimir Putin! And used deep-sea diving equipment to place explosive charges on the gas pipelines. Incredibly brave and brilliant in one way, except for all the lying. On September 26, 2022, 3 explosions caused massive leaks on the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, which run from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea. The attack left only one of 4 gas links in the network intact as winter approached. How's your energy bills lately? Stravinsky did not act alone. Good, right. Cover that off. And did not plan the operation, according to the people familiar with his role, which has not been previously reported. The officer took orders from more senior Ukrainian officials, who ultimately reported to General Valery Zaluzhny, Ukraine's highest-ranking military officer, said people familiar with how the operation was carried out. Ukraine has launched many daring and secretive operations against Russian forces. They're even trying to propagandise this. But the Nord Stream attack targeted civilian infrastructure built to provide energy to millions of people in Europe, while Gazprom, the Russian state-owned gas conglomerate, owns 51% of Nord Stream. Western energy companies, including Germany, France, and the Netherlands, are partners and invested billions in the project. Amazing. So it's an attack on something that belongs to a wide variety of European interests. See how complicated this war gets. It's not like, remember when it was just put a sticker in your window and don't ask any questions at all. You're blowing up energy resources of Dutch energy firms and stuff. That's really weird and wild and off-grid activity, isn't it? It's not look, see these Ukrainian children. That's all this is about. Nothing else. Why? So you won't be blowing up any pipelines. Why don't you mind your own business, you conspiracy theorist? Ukraine had long complained that Nord Stream would allow Russia to bypass Ukrainian pipes, depriving Kiev of huge transit revenue. So mad, isn't it? So many conflicts are about canals and ships and commerce and service. It's worth paying attention to canals when it comes to geopolitical issues, I've learned. Stravinsky's participation in the Nord Stream bombing contradicts Zelensky's public denials that his country was involved. I am president and I give orders accordingly, Zelensky said in a press interview in June, responding to a report by The Post that the US Central Intelligence Agency had learned of Ukraine's plans before the attack. I wait to hear what the deep state of the USA and BlackRock executives want, and then I give those orders. Nothing of the sort has been done by Ukraine. I would never act that way, Zelensky said. You can't really blame him. That's what politicians do. The switch between actor and politician is not that much of a radical one, really, is it? Let me know in the chat. This is Jonathan Cook. A year on, with world attention on Gaza, the Western media quietly reports that the biggest ever act of industrial sabotage and environmental terrorism was carried out by a supposed ally, Ukraine. I didn't even think about that. I didn't have time to think, did you? These are the people that are always banging on about the environment and everything. We've got to do something about climate change, and here's what that is. Stay in your house, have an ID card, shut up and do as you're told. Meanwhile, we're just going to blow up this pipeline, mess with the economies of all Europe, the energy resources of the entire population, not to mention polluting the sea, which suddenly isn't relevant in this conversation when we blow blow up things in the middle of the sea. All of the little crabs and coral and that just go beep, 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 and it's all fine. Now put a sticker on your car window and shut up. That's the same Ukraine that has received untold billions of dollars in weapons and aid that could have been spent on alleviating hardship in the West. Would you rather that your tax dollars or tax pound or tax whatever your currency is spent on infrastructure in your country, or are you happy supporting all these wars? No one ever asks you, do they? Do you notice that in a democracy? We're going over there to defend democracy. Can we have a vote on it? Censor that son of a bitch! The blowing up of the Nord Stream pipelines plunged Europe into a prolonged energy crisis, tipping its economies deeper into a recession from which they are yet to recover, and forced Europe to buy in more expensive US liquid gas. Oh no, what a terrible side effect. I guess, does anyone else anywhere around here have any gas for sale? We got some gas for sale, but I gotta tell you, it's expensive. There's an energy crisis. What do you mean energy crisis? Well, people keep blowing up all the pipelines, so, that's just supply and demand. Given the close ties between the Ukrainian and US militaries and the extremely sophisticated operation necessary to blow up the deep sea pipelines, there is an additional conclusion to draw that the Western media continues to avoid. If Ukraine did it, it was not alone. The US must have been intimately involved too. Of course. I mean, in a sense, you've got to start questioning what a nation is. What is the United States of America? If the United States of America is providing the training, is providing the military equipment, is providing the intelligence, is demanding that Starlink provide the hookups for guided missiles and stuff, like, how is it Ukraine? In what sense is it Ukraine? Is Ukraine in the hearts of the individuals that are suffering, that believe in Ukraine, that are being sent to their deaths to avoid a PR crisis in America that's less inclined towards endless foreign wars that need not affect the domestic population? And in fact, there's an argument for a negatively affecting the domestic population because of the tax dollars, because of the ultimate death of military personnel, because there's an energy crisis that's been exacerbated, creating scarcity. If it wasn't for independent media, you wouldn't be talking about this right now. You would not be. Once they've achieved their censorship goals, believe me, this is not about hate speech. We have got to stop that hate speech. What do you mean hate speech? I hate it when people speech stuff that I don't like them saying because it exposes that we're lying. That's the hate speech. So, does the Ukraine have long historic ties with the US deep state, in particular the CIA? The answer to that is yes. Here's some evidence. Ukraine's spy agencies have developed military capabilities over nearly a decade since Russia first seized Ukrainian territory in 2014, a period during which the services also forged deep new bonds with the CIA. The missions have involved elite teams of Ukrainian operatives drawn from directorates that were formed, trained and equipped in close partnership with the CIA, according to current and former Ukrainian and US officials. Since 2015, the CIA spent tens of millions of dollars to transform Ukraine's Soviet-formed services into potent allies against Moscow, officials said. All right, so there's just entrenchment immersion. I suppose like the way that you know that Barack Obama was funded by Wall Street, Biden's funded by Wall Street, the big tech have control through donations. The deep state of the United States and Ukraine are so sort of interconnected that there's no independent action. I mean, you can see that if you watch our man Zelensky begging on the TV set.
If you can't give us some financial support, okay, please. Give us a credit.
It's pretty clear that's like, no, please, can we have them resources back? Because independently, we don't really have much of a chance against Russia and Russia's considerable might. Unless we have access to the CIA and Navy SEALs and people that know how to blow up pipes, lines. And like, so in what way is it Ukraine? It's clearly integrated. There's a degree of integration that negates their sovereignty anyway. Of course, we sold the narrative that we're assisting them. And on that bandwidth, if you kept your consciousness, which is what they want you to do, on that bandwidth, that all makes sense. Yeah, do you want children to die? No. I've got children. I love children. When anyone to die, I wish all these wars would stop. Good. Then just let's do what we're going to do. You're telling us the truth, aren't you? The agency has provided Ukraine with advanced surveillance systems, trained recruits at sites in Ukraine as well as the United States, built new headquarters for departments in Ukraine's military intelligence agency, and shared intelligence on a scale that would have been unimaginable before Russia illegally annexed Crimea and fomented a separatist war in eastern Ukraine. But other than that, we have no involvement whatsoever. And to say we do is a conspiracy theory, and we did not blow up that pipeline either. The CIA maintains a significant presence in Kiev, officials said. The extent of the CIA's involvement with Ukraine's security services has not previously been disclosed. Presumably because if it was disclosed, it would make you so happy that you'd skip out into the street and maybe get hit by a truck or just accidentally blow up a pipeline in an act of sabotage. The CIA-Ukraine collaboration took root in the aftermath of 2014 political protests that prompted Ukraine's pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych to flee the country, followed by Russia's annexation of Crimea and its arming of separatists in the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. Training sites were located outside Kiev, where hand-picked recruits were instructed by CIA personnel, officials said. This used to be lefty stuff, this. This used to be like, oh, you know what the CIA do? They go down to Nicaragua or they go down to Panama. They're all involved in causing coups, Argentina, Chile, all of that, Iran. Just used to be sort of a thing that everyone knew. And then politics went all different and turned into a television show. And people forgot that this is plainly still happening. The plan was to form units capable of operating behind front lines and working as covert groups, said a Ukrainian official involved in the effort. From 2015 on, the CIA embarked on such extensive transformation of the GUR, Ukrainian Military Intelligence Service, that within several years, we'd kind of rebuilt it from scratch, the former US intelligence official said. We only rebuilt it from scratch. We were hardly involved at all. All there was a scratch, and then we rebuilt it. So, I don't know, is that being involved? You tell us. One of the main architects of the effort, who served as CIA station chief in Kiev, now runs the Ukraine task force at CIA headquarters. Barely involved at all. The GUR began recruiting operatives for its own new active measures department, officials said. At sites in Ukraine and later the United States, GUR operatives were trained on skills ranging from clandestine maneuvers behind enemy lines to weapons platforms and explosives. And you think that training them on clandestine maneuvers behind enemy lines with explosives could somehow be connected to the Nord Stream pipeline? Those clandestine maneuvers with explosives were a surprise for your birthday, and you've ruined it. You're just like Putin. The CIA helped the GUR acquire state-of-the-art surveillance and electronic eavesdropping systems, officials said. They included mobile equipment that could be placed along Russian-controlled lines in eastern Ukraine, but also software tools used to exploit the cell phones of Kremlin officials visiting occupied territory from Moscow. Ukrainian officers operated the systems, officials said, but everything gleaned was shared with the Americans. So it's a collaborative effort. This is what proxy war is. You can't trust Joe Biden. You can't trust the legacy media. They're not telling you the truth. What they'll do is make a load of loud racket for the propaganda and then little pipsqueak farts like escaping gas when the truth leaks out, polluting the Baltic Sea. Concerned that the GUR's aging facilities were likely compromised by Russian intelligence, the CIA paid for new headquarters buildings for the GUR's Spetsnaz paramilitary division and a separate directorate responsible for electronic espionage. The new capabilities were transformative, officials said. In one day, we could intercept 250,000 to 300,000 separate communications from Russian military and FSB units, said a former senior GUR official. There was so much information, we couldn't manage it ourselves. My God, they're inundated. They've just been flooded. It's too much information, literally. Troves of data were relayed through the new CIA-built facility back to Washington, where they were scrutinized by CIA and NSA analysts, officials said. We were giving them the ability through us to collect on Russian targets, the former GUR official said. Asked about the magnitude of the CIA investments, the official said it was millions of dollars. But if you've got some sort of peculiar remnant belief in this system, if you think that whether it's COVID or the war and presumably current events that they are telling you the truth and that you're probably morally in alignment with the systems that control what you think, how you speak, what you eat, what you wear, where you go, what you do, and are asking for more and more power of that nature every single goddamn day, here are a series of powerful American figures declaring publicly prior to the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline that they would sort of like to do that. Just to blast away as if it's an explosive up against the pipeline any remnant belief that you might have in this system and its reliability.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
If that was Trump, he would have said, we'll train Ukrainian secret services to blow it up.
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
What did you mean by one way or another? What's one way? Well, we asked them to stop. And what's another? We asked them to stop with explosives.
Now we need to have tougher sanctions, and I'm afraid at some point this is going to probably have to involve oil and gas.
2014, when there was some pretty significant social and political upheaval in Ukraine, which the USA were involved in.
People say, well, the Europeans will run out of energy. Well, the Russians will run out of cash before the Europeans run out of energy. And I understand that it's uncomfortable to have an effect on business ties in this way.
Uncomfortable to have effects on business ties in this way. Like, business is the sanctified territory that you don't want to breach. Uncomfortable is military action to reorganize commercial relationships.
But this is one of the few instruments that we have. Over the long run, you simply want to change the structure of energy dependence.
We're just going to change the structure of that energy dependence. That's all changed now.
You want to depend more on the North American energy platform, the tremendous bounty of oil and gas that we're finding in North America. You want to have pipelines that don't go through Ukraine and Russia.
You don't want pipelines going through Ukraine and Russia, but there are pipelines and plans to put further pipelines. Yeah, you don't want that. But how do you do it? You just rearrange those financial relationships.
For years, we've tried to get the Europeans to be interested in different pipeline routes. It's time to do that.
Could you be interested in this different pipeline route? No, we like this one. This is good. It's convenient. It's inexpensive. It was very reliable. Okay, well, it's time now to do that.
And so some of this is simply acting, and acting as quickly as possible.
All we're doing is acting. You've just witnessed a lot of acting. There was the bit when we were acting like Russia blew up that pipeline. Then there was a bit where we acted like it was something in Scandinavia. Then there was a bit where we acted like Seymour Hersh was a liar, even though he's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. Then there's a bit where we acted like we didn't say all of this stuff in advance of the Nord Stream pipeline. Then there's the bit where they act as if these wars are humanitarian and for goals other than strategic, resource-based, or hegemonic goals. Then there's the bit where they tell you that if you criticize this or oppose their agenda, you're the problem, that you should be silenced. Then there's the bit where they introduce censorship and surveillance. Then there's the bit where they shut down dissent. All of it is just acting. Lovely old acting, pretending everything's okay in the world when we're governed by liars who are trying to destroy us while telling us that they're in our service. When are we going to intervene? When are we going to stop complying? When are we going to find within ourselves the spiritual resources to firewalk across the opposition we might feel for people that have different political, social, or cultural views in order that we might align and unite, diversified but unified, decentralized but united against the greatest powers the world has ever seen. A true global hegemony that wants you to be just like a little blob of larvae with no power other than the power to consume, presumably rather expensive gas that's come via a pretty inconvenient route to your home. We have to unite. We have to unite now. And critically, we have to remember that whenever legacy media is talking, to bear in mind a few of the events of the last few years. They told us this about the pandemic, but it turned out this was true. They told us this about that medication, turns out this was true. They told us this about that pipeline, turns out this was true. Hopefully, that was the only examples of them ever lying to meet their own agenda. I don't think it was. Do you? Okay, we gave you that, you awakened wonder. Let us know in the chat and the comments what you think. And remember, consider becoming an awakened wonder, joining our locals conversation where people come together in community to talk about solutions and you get access to our interviews. Plus, why don't you get yourself, why don't you get yourself like a little hat with a crow on it? The crow, the figure of the trickster, the figure that moves between worlds. Now, before we debunk the next conspiracy, we're going to have to say goodbye to you. It's a January 6th episode. You're going to love this. How many deep state agents were in that crowd that day? Was it an example of a false flag? Was it an example of an event that would never have gotten, let's call it insurrectionist, without certain instigatory agents? Goodbye. If you're watching this on YouTube, you've got a few seconds left now, just a few seconds. Click the link. Join us over on Rumble.